Hello and welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. And I'll tell you what, if you did not hear the last episode of FAIRtax Power Radio, you need to go back and listen to it. Randy Fisher brought all kinds of really great information on why the income tax and the better way that Paul Ryan's pushing just isn't going to fly. The stability is not there. The evasion is going to be rampant, and the border adjustability is just something that my head's still swimming about, but it's something we need to address.
Very simply, the plans that the House has, specifically Speaker Ryan and his income tax plan called the Better Way, still leaves us with a huge number of problems, internationally, domestically, any way you want to look at it. Because very simply, if you maintain an income tax, it's not going to stay stable. We know that. We know that from experience. Look at the Reagan. A lot of these tax bills start with to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. That's because in 86, Reagan scrapped what they had, started over again. It was still massive. And today it's more than twice the size it was 30 years ago. So
and a lot of that is regulation over and above the tax code. Things that have the effect of law that Congress didn't pass. And that's one of the things that the new president, President Trump, has taken aim at. Yeah,
in fact, I've got a nice article here. This is from Bloomberg BNA. President Donald Trump's executive order requiring federal agencies to eliminate 2 rules for every new one might delay the IRS's work on regulations, including much-needed rules on new partnership audit regime. Former official told Bloomberg BNA. The January 30th executive order is another significant step in Trump's efforts to fulfill his campaign promise that he would cut back federal regulations. It follows a January 20th White House memorandum placing a freeze on all federal rulemaking until the new administration can review all regulations in process. I like the sound of that.
I can think of one regulation I'd like to get rid of. It's called the income tax.
That's...
And we've been hating on the income tax for the past several episodes here at FAIRtax Power Radio, and with good reason. There is a lot wrong with it that it just cannot be fixed.
And it's getting worse every day.
You're still on the Titanic when you've got the income tax, no matter how you arrange the deck chairs. So let's go back on this episode of FAIRtax Power Radio, kind of to FAIRtax 101, and explain to people what the fair tax is, how it works, and as we go along, how it's better than the income tax.
That's right. All right. So, now, those of you that live in states that have a sales tax and no income tax.
Like Florida, where we're lucky to be.
Florida, Tennessee, Texas. I can't remember some of the others. There are at least 9 states.
Somebody will tell us on our Facebook page, I bet.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll check it here.
Well, those states already pretty much know how the fair tax works. Bob and I are familiar since we live in Florida here. We have a sales tax. When we go to the store or when we write a check to the garbage collection or whatever service we're paying for, the sales tax is included in it, and there is no income tax. There is no Florida income tax agency.
Yeah, well, actually, in Florida, the sales tax is added on. It's exclusive. It's not included in the price. You take a $100 item up to the counter, they'll charge you $106, $107 if you got a local sales tax as well.
Right.
But the fair tax is a little bit different than that. You still pay it anonymously at the cash register when you buy things. And there are no exemptions, no exceptions. There are some in the various state sales taxes that are exempt from. But that's basically what you're going to do. I remember posting up on Facebook about a week or so ago that I spent nearly 2 hours with TurboTax online to do a very simple return. I'm a very simple man financially, guys. I've got my state retirement, my Social Security, and my announcing gig over at the community college, and that's it. No rentals, no investments, no royalties, no business, none of that stuff. And I take the standard deduction. And it still took me nearly 2 hours to do my income. I did not spend one single nanosecond doing my taxes for the state of Florida because Florida has no income tax, and we can and we need to do the same thing on the federal level.
That's a great example. A great example. Yeah, even, Bob and I are both retired. My wife and I used to have a business. We don't. We used to have rental property up in northern New York. We don't anymore. It's very simple. I have retirement. I have even less streams of income than Bob, because he does this announcing and he does this other stuff, all right? And it's still... Bob, did you spend any time working on the itemized deductions?
A little bit, because that's one of the things that TurboTax goes through.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. You go through it and you figure out what all your itemized deductions, then it says the standard deduction works for you.
Yeah, exactly. You spend
so
all that time.
I spent all this hours, not hours, but I spent a significant amount of time going through what's deductible, because the software asks you that. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this?
Yeah.
On and on down the line. Yeah, how much? And you fill all that out, only to say, well, you don't have enough. Take the standard deduction. They'd have told me that. I'd have saved a lot of time.
You must be more organized, because it takes me a lot longer to go through that. I have to keep looking things up. But yeah, you spend all that time working on your itemized deductions, like Bob says, only to find out that you can't do the itemized deductions. The standard deduction is better.
Yeah, you can, but the standard deduction is better.
Yeah.
So,
and so the fair tax is very simply a consumption tax, a sales tax. But it's on the federal level instead of the state level. But most people in the country are already familiar with a sales tax, and you're familiar with the fact that it's very simple and it's very automatic.
Yeah, the state of Florida has no idea how much money I make, where I get it from, or anything of the like. Just when I buy something, the vendor, the merchant, collects the tax on the purchase that I make. And at that point, it's up to him. It's up to the vendor to remit that to the State Department of Revenue. And the fair tax would do the same thing, because it is going to be collected by the states at the cash register only at the retail level, which means that all of the corporate income taxes and the compliance costs and everything that's associated with that goes away, which means that the wholesale prices of goods drop dramatically. Or else somebody, if they try to keep it, their competitors are going to eat their lunch if they don't pass the savings on. And then the fair tax is added at the consumer level, much simpler. And I love the anonymous part. I do not like sharing the intimate financial details of my, financial picture with the government. Yeah. I just don't like that. I don't have to share that with the state. I just pay my tax at the cash register when I buy things. And the fair tax gets rid, folks, if you haven't really heard by now, the fair tax gets rid of the entire income tax system and makes paying your federal taxes the same way we here in Florida pay our state taxes at the cash register when you buy things anonymously, simply, end of story, no problem.
Yeah, and you don't need an agency like the IRS, because it's collected at the cash register.
Yeah, and then it is the various state departments of revenue will enforce that against the vendors. But we, the individual taxpayers, are scot-free.
And there's 45 states currently collecting a sales tax, so they know how to do it. Yeah. They just have to make a little extra effort to collect along with their state sales tax, the federal tax. Well,
that's just going to be a very small addition to a lot of the commercial point-of-sale software that's out there.
Yeah.
Everybody that's doing that has to provide for a sales tax, even if you got a state that doesn't use it. But very simple to do. The merchant has all the work on that, and the merchants will be paid a little bit. They get to keep a little bit of what they collect from the fair tax.
That's right. And the states get to keep a little bit of what they collect for their trouble, too. But now, Bob mentioned that it's going to cost less to produce these products and services. That's because the fair tax, like we said, it's a sales tax at the final sale to the consumer. Nobody before that pays any tax, including corporations. So not only does it get rid of our income tax as individuals, it gets rid of the federal income tax and all the other inheritance tax and this tax and that tax. I can't think of
alternative minimum tax, estate tax.
Yeah, all that stuff. Anything that looks anything like a federal income tax is gone.
Reminds me of one of Kenny Henson's songs. Call me gone. It's just gone city. I love that.
And so when you get rid of the income tax for the corporations, not only does it reduce their cost of doing business because of the income tax, but for many corporations, it costs them more to comply with the tax code than it does to actually pay the tax code. Then you also get the large corporations that are extremely savvy and have divisions of CPAs and tax attorneys and can structure their business to take advantage of legal loopholes and legal deductions in the tax law. Everything legal, so they end up paying no tax.
Yeah.
All right. But They still have to comply with, they still have compliance costs by hiring all those people to make sure they're not paying any tax.
Yeah, and we hit on this in our last episode, that all of those costs are rolled into the cost of the items that we export, making U.S. goods less competitive on the global market. So getting rid of all of that stuff, replacing it with the fair tax, a retail consumption tax, is going to just help the U.S. economy tremendously.
Yeah, so get rid of the income tax, which means, let's see, if we don't have a federal income tax, that means we don't need those people in Washington collecting the federal tax. What's that agency, Bob?
The IRS.
Oh, yeah.
If you'd like to see the IRS tossed on the scrap heap of history,
you might be a FAIRtax fan.
I couldn't resist that one.
But we won't need the IRS, and they will be given like 3 years to finish up what they're currently doing, because if you're right now, we have an income tax. It's legal. It's the law. You need to obey the law and so forth. But as of a certain date, when the fair tax passes, the IRS will no longer be collecting any new taxes, just finishing up what they're currently working on, and then they go away. And don't worry, these people are not going to get fired and sent out, and end up on the street someplace. It's the government. It's the federal government. They take care of their own.
All right, let me change gears a little bit. When the income tax goes away, what else goes away with it? The most insidious thing that the government has ever imposed on the citizenry.
Yeah, and that's the 16th Amendment.
That is withholding, is what I was thinking of.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the 16th.
Yeah,
that's right. 16th Amendment first, withholding came next.
Yeah, the 16th Amendment allowed the income tax to begin with. But with the income tax comes withholding.
Yeah.
Which means the government takes their pound of flesh off the top of your paycheck before you even see it. In other words, they set themselves up as your highest spending priority. You pay the government before you spend a dime on paying your family. And I like the idea of bringing home my entire paycheck with no withholding and no payroll taxes taken out of it. And that will happen with the fair tax because the income tax goes away.
That's right. Or in our case, our retirement check. Nothing's taken out of it. Yeah. They started, the 16th Amendment was ratified back in 1903. Big mistake.
1913.
I'm sorry.
1913.
1913, thank you. I was off.
No problem.
1913. So we've had it for 104 years now. And shortly after, there was a lot of debate in Congress. I've read a little bit, and I've listened to Congressman Linder, who was the original sponsor of the fair tax in the House. And he mentioned in one of his speeches, he said there was a senator that said, be careful what you wish for, because if we do this, before you know it, the government will be taking 10% of everything you earn. And he was pretty much laughed at. Oh, come on, they'll never do that. Within 4 years, all right, they started in 1913, the top tax rate for the ultra wealthy was 7%. Within 4 years, because of World War I, it went up to over 70%, 70. That was just in 4 years. And then, like Bob said, within 30 years, they started this withholding thing, which, as Bob explained, put the government as the higher priority than feeding your family.
Yeah, and what's most insidious about that thing is that the government can just keep raising your taxes and raising your taxes and raising your taxes, and you only see it a couple of dollars at a time every week. But you add that up over the course of if you had to write a check for the entire amount of the income tax you owe at the end of every year, like they used to do before withholding.
That's right.
There would be a revolt in this country.
Oh, it certainly would, especially when people start adding up their federal tax, their state tax, and everything else. But that's another issue. But yeah, let's make it simple. Let's forget about it. Let's repeal the 16th Amendment, which, by the way, is required as co-legislation with the fair tax. We have to repeal the 16th Amendment because you cannot let Congress have both a sales tax and an income tax. We've seen this, they cannot control themselves. And so the all vestiges of the income tax have to go away along with their associated costs and the IRS.
And all the invasiveness and intrusiveness, the government with the fair tax that gets rid of the income tax, the government no longer has any business at all knowing how much money you make, where you make it, or anything like that, how much you give to your church, how many kids you have, how much you do for this, how much you do for that. I mean, the invasion of privacy that the income tax imposes on us is just staggering.
Yeah, even in polite conversation, you're out with people, you're at a party, you're at dinner or something like that, And if somebody alludes to, if you get the idea somebody's trying to ask you how much you make a year, you can politely say, it's none of your business. But you can't say that to Uncle Sam, unfortunately. No, we're not allowed. We can say that to our neighbors and our friends, even our children. All right, but we can't say that to Uncle Sam.
Yeah,
something's
you go to
backwards
jail
here.
if you do.
Yeah, jeez. So it's bad.
Okay.
So get rid of the income tax, get rid of the IRS, replace it with a sales tax. It's much easier to implement. The IRS, we talked about this in the last episode. The IRS spends 25 cents for every dollar they collect. That's terribly inefficient.
Indeed, but I tell you what, with the income tax going away, your withholding goes away. You get your whole full amount of your paycheck.
Yep.
All of the invasiveness and intrusiveness goes away. Tax returns go away. You no longer have to fill out a tax return if the fair tax becomes law. But Ron, consumption taxes are regressive. They hurt the poor.
Yep. There's a good website called PopVox, POPVOX.com. We encourage you to go there because this is where you can get involved, not just with the fair tax, but any legislation you feel passionate about. And if you go to H.R. 25 or in the new Congress, in the new legislation, it's S18 in the Senate. Their co-legislation. You'll see the people that you'll see. First off, 95% of the people like the fair tax. You can sign up to either like it or dislike it. 95% of the people like the fair tax. The people that don't like it, you can tell right away they haven't studied it because the first thing they say is that it's a sales tax. It's regressive.
Okay,
all right.
Let me set that up again. It hurts the poor. What does the fair tax do about that?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, the fair tax does something very wonderful and very simple about that. All right, the Americans for Fair Taxation, when they're coming up with this proposal, which has been legislation in Congress since 1999, they knew they were going to get hammered with this regressive issue. So they put their heads together and said, all right, how are we going to take care of this? Well, Health and Human Services puts out poverty levels every year. We just got the new ones for this year, okay? And so they know that, let's take a family of four. It takes a family of four, mom and dad and two kids, like $32,500 minimum to buy food, clothing, shelter, basic med care, and things like that.
Yeah, that's just providing for the basic necessities for your family of four. Right. It's going to cost you $32,000 or $32,500.
So we want to make sure that people who are just getting by, that family of four that's making just enough to get by, and they don't have a lot of discretionary money. We don't want them hurt with a 23% consumption tax. So we're going to rebate it back to them up to the poverty level. And it's called the Family Consumption Allowance. The nickname is the prebate because they get it at the beginning of the month. They know they're a family of four. They know that the basic necessities of life cost so much per month. I don't have the figure in front of me. And so they know that they're going to get 23%. So the prebate will be set up as part of the fair tax so that family of four or a family of two or a family of six or whatever scenario, and it doesn't have to be kids. It could be mom and dad, one child, and Aunt Matilda who can't take care of herself anymore. Any dependent. That family is going to get a prebate. Now, it just so happens that the new prebate figures are out, and a family of four is going to get $623 every month. That is going to reimburse them for the fair tax that they would be paying on the basic necessities. So essentially, it's a wash.
Yeah, they will pay the fair tax at the cash register on
everybody
every dollar,
everybody
on every purchase. So that you don't get into the business of trying to figure out who spends how much. Just collect it from everybody, but rebate back to everybody the portion that they don't owe. And what you don't owe, you do not owe a dime until your spending rises above this poverty level, which is your family consumption allowance. And so they will take that amount, divide it by 12, and send you that much. It's just a tax refund. The same thing that you've got now. You will definitely overpay the fair tax because there will be tax you don't owe that you will pay at the cash register, and you get it back on a monthly basis. And in fact, I remember something I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I was about the fair tax, and he's saying, if you get the fair tax, my tax refund goes away. And I asked him, would you rather have one once a year or once a month? And his jaw hit the ground.
Yeah.
I'd rather have one once a month. Good, you're a fair tax fan. He had no answer for that.
You know, I just thought of something, Bob.
Go ahead.
We should have, at the beginning of this episode, we should have addressed it to President Trump.
Okay.
He's the man we need to convince about this fair tax.
That's true. Well, he's surrounded by people who are well versed in it. And
that's right.
Mike Pence was a co-sponsor when he was in Congress. Of course, Mike Huckabee, the former governor of Arkansas, is probably the most vocal fair tax person that's been on the national scene for the past decade or so.
And Huckabee's daughter still works for Trump.
Oh, yeah. So he is surrounded by people who know what it is.
And several people he's selected for his cabinet.
We just got to convince those folks up there to come up with the political will to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Because they're kind of leaning towards modifying their current income tax. And we've spent the last 3 episodes explaining how if you stay with any kind of an income tax, I don't care how you simplify it, it will not stay simple for long. The lobbyists, I mean, look at this. Congress.gov, we already talked about this. They've got over 2,000 proposals in the first, not even 2 months of the new Congress. And they got over 2,000 proposals to modify the tax code. This is crazy, folks. All right. The fair tax is stable because the only thing that Congress can change once it's passed is the rate. Yes, Congress can change the rate. But if they do, they change it on everybody. They cannot play class warfare. They cannot pick winners and losers. If they think it's really necessary to increase or decrease the tax rate, the fair tax rate, it applies to everybody in the country.
Amen.
And they can't play games with it.
Amen. So which would you rather have? Would you rather have an income tax where you have withholding, you have to spend hours filling out a tax return, you have to have the government's nose in your personal financial business, or would you rather have the fair tax, no tax returns, no withholding, the government does not have to stick its nose into your personal financial business, plus you get a rebate every month instead of every year? That's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
we have got to get the fair tax.
Now, it is true that the price of things will go up some amount. I've seen various estimates from different experts. I think it's going to be around 10 to 13%, but you're going to get your entire paycheck and you're going to get the prebate. So yes, the cost of things will go up somewhat, but your income is going to go up even greater.
Yeah, your purchasing power will go up.
That's
We've had
right.
several studies that show
everybody will have greater purchasing
and that
power
is at
under
all
the fair
income
tax.
levels too.
All income levels. Yep.
Now, if you're one of those folks who just thinks the wealthy ought to be socked, then you got a problem. But if you really want to help the poor, if you really want to help those on the lower end of the scale, you have got to get behind the fair tax. It is the only tax system that completely untaxes the poor. Because even if they don't pay their income tax, their income tax liability is zero, working poor still pays the payroll taxes, FICA and Medicare, which go away under the fair tax.
And that payroll tax is the most regressive tax we have right now. Talk about regressive taxes. That's it. That's the king right there, the payroll tax. So President Trump, you need to listen to Mike Pence about the fair tax. You want real tax reform? It's the fair tax. All right. The other stuff that they're talking about is not real reform. It's just nibbling around the edges. We've spelled it out in the last couple of episodes. It will not stay stable. It will. Evasion is another big problem. How do you evade a sales tax? It's very difficult. I mean, you're going to go into Walmart or Target or Sears and say, I'd like to buy that new TV, but I don't want you to charge me the sales tax on it. Yeah, how's that going to go?
I'll say goodbye.
Yes. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Wouldn't President Trump love to be the one that says, IRS, you're fired?
Yeah.
Now, that'll work.
Well, that would be nice.
Oh, mercy. And
I'd like to be there when that happens.
I would too. I tell you what, time flies when you're having fun. We need to wrap this up here before too much longer. But once again, if you like the idea of feeding your family before feeding the government, if you like the idea of getting your entire paycheck, no withholding out of it, if you like the idea of getting a prebate every month for a family of four, $600, you like the fair tax. It's that simple.
Yeah. And that, simple is it. I mean, if you had to describe, if you were limited to one word, simple is it. The fair tax is so simple that it's just everybody can understand it. Right now, I think everybody's steeped in confusion, and they can't believe that something that simple would be that effective, but it would be.
Yeah,
Let's
and right
go back
close
to
on
our
its
roots.
heels is fair.
Yeah.
The fair tax is fair. That's why I got named that way.
Just the fact that there is a 16th Amendment meant that they had to amend the Constitution to allow Congress to collect a sales tax. That means the original founding fathers and the framers of the Constitution, they abhorred the idea of an income tax because they knew it could be abused. And so they didn't want it. I mean, our founding fathers should be rolling over in their graves, because of this crazy tax system and all the other nonsense. And in this episode, we've just hit the tip of the iceberg.
We just barely scratched it.
There's all kinds of things like civil asset forfeiture.
Lots of stuff wrong with the income tax that goes away. But before we run out of time here, let's remind everybody that we have our Facebook page. The FAIRtax guys are on Facebook.
Yep.
And we will be doing another. We've done 2 already. We'll be doing another Facebook Live on March the 6th. Now, I'm not sure when this episode's going to be published. But,
yeah, we're thinking ahead.
But we're doing another one on April the 15th. Now, we don't normally do our Facebook Lives on a Saturday, but April 15th falls on a Saturday this year. And I'd like you all to be thinking about what you can contribute to that Facebook Live, because we would love to hear about the horror stories that you have with your income tax return and all that kind of stuff that goes away with the FAIRtax.
Yep, this episode will air on the 3rd. And following Monday in the evening, Facebook Live. Those of you that are on Facebook, we'll have an event. We'll publicize it. We'll send stuff out. But look for the FAIRtax guys on Facebook Live. It'll be on the FAIRtax official Facebook page because they've got a much bigger audience than we do.
Yeah, we've done the last 2 on our Facebook guys page. We'll have instructions on our page on how to get over to where the thing is so you can check it out.
No problem.
But we'd love to see you there. And of course, Randy will be online helping people with the questions they have. It's just a fun time that we get together.
It is. And the last one was quite successful. We had over 2,000 views. Yeah. It was great. Oh, Sonny?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Sonny showed up. Sonny from Brooklyn, not the Bronx.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll do
that. Let's see. We mentioned Pop Fox. We mentioned our email address, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com, if you have a question or comment.
And we want to make sure that people express their opinion to Donald Trump, whitehouse.gov.
Yes, whitehouse.gov/contact. This is very important, folks. If you want to see this happen, you have to let the White House know. And you can vote early and vote often. You can do this every day if you wish. whitehouse.gov/contact. Go on there, fill out the little simple form, and tell the president that you want the FAIRtax, that the income tax is beyond help, beyond repair. It's too corruptible. The IRS can be weaponized. We have to get rid of the income tax and replace it with the FAIRtax. And if you need more reasons to come up with why we need the FAIRtax, go to bigsolution.org, bigsolution singular .org, and scroll down there, and there's a whole bunch of reasons that the FAIRtax is superior to the income tax.
And the webinar, real quick.
The webinar is the 4th Thursday of every month. All right. By the time you hear this, you're going to be a few weeks away in March. But the 4th Thursday, you go to fairtax.org/webinar. You have to register for it in advance. It's a very good way to learn the basics. Larry and Mark from Orlando do a great job with this. They've been doing it like 7 years. They have a simple introduction of the FAIRtax. Then they always take a special topic.
All right. And that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We be out of time. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
We are the FAIRtax guys, reminding you that the FAIRtax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
FAIRtax is coming.